pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome. We're here for a study session for Sound Transit Update. First, Kent Smith, Sound Transit Liaison, will give us a brief primer, and then we also have the introduction of some folks here. We've got Katie Druhl, Government...
Recording in progress.
Now you can start.
Exactly. We've got Sound Transit introduction here of Katie Druhl, Government Relations in South King County, and also a Federal Way Link Extension, FWLE, project update from Safir Sabani, Deputy Executive Project Director for Federal Way Link Extension, and Federal Way Downtown Station, FWDS, Transit Oriented Development, TOD, Matthew Mateo, Senior Project Manager for TOD, and Harrison Price, Program Manager for TOD Engagement. With that, Kent.
Good evening, Mayor, Council Members, President, Council.
Recording in progress.
There we go. Give me 1 second. So yes, Kent Smith with the Public Works Department. So I'm here to introduce Sound Transit, to discuss progress on Federal Link Extension as well as Transit Oriented Development, TOD. But before I get to that, I wanted to mention that the team for Tacoma Dome Link Extension, which was planned to present here, is gonna do a presentation tentatively scheduled for January 21st at the council study session to talk about the progress for Tacoma Dome Link Extension prior to the DEIS. So they will be back. They're just not at this meeting yet. And then I'll turn it over to Katie Druhl, who's going to give an intro. She is the government relations, in charge of government relations for South King County and for Sound Transit. Thank you.
Welcome, Katie.
Thanks, Kent. Nice to see everybody tonight. Thank you, Mayor and Council President and Council members for the opportunity to speak. We're excited to talk about all of the Federal Way Link and TOD actions that are coming today. As Kent alluded, we obviously have a lot of work happening in the city of Federal Way. Tonight, we're going to focus on the Federal Way Link piece, but Tacoma Dome Link and OMF, if you have questions on those topics before January, I'm happy to take them down and take them back to the project team. And I think that's it. I'm going to kick it to Sepper.
Okay, good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide an update for you today.
Oh, can you hold on? Thomas, we got an echo here.
Kind of sounds cool. Could be a very interesting meeting.
Sounds like you're getting interviewed at a whole stadium ballpark.
What they're doing now, oh, where's Ryan? Okay. How long is executive session going to take?
This one. I'm just going to share the whole screen. Oh, it's done.
15? 20?
It should. Why is it not? Go back to.
15? So we should be done, I'd say we should give ourselves maybe 10 to 6, maybe 5 to 6, somewhere in there.
You just started this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
So now he's meeting.
Okay. There's something a little weird, but just.
I don't know what we do without Thomas.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just.
I don't think there is a Thomas.
Hide that top part.
There we go.
And then, is it open twice?
There's something going on. I want to just get
I
you
messed
guys
it up.
going. Is it? Let me. Okay, just leave the meeting. How about that? this. I'm gonna escape that. Close this. Open this. Okay, do not join. Share screen. Share. Perfect. Now hide video panel and make controls. And there we go.
Thank you.
Gotta take a little look to get that.
Okay. All right. Test it out real quick. Okay, I think we're good. So start it back up again. As you know, as Katie said, I'm Sepper Sobani. I'm the Deputy Executive Project Director for the Federal Way Link Extension Project. Today, I'm going to give you a quick reminder of what's included in the project. And if technology works, which we're off to a slow start here, we will watch a drone flyover video of the project, which honestly is the second best thing to taking an actual site visit. I'll then take a little time to provide some more information on the construction status and some of the key features on the project. And last, I'll wrap up with a look ahead of the remaining work to complete the project. All right, I think most of you already know, Link Light Rail currently extends from the newly opened Linwood Link extension up north to the Angle Lake Station in SeaTac. Federal Way will extend one-line service from Angle Lake down to Federal Way with stations and garages at Kent Des Moines Station, just across from Highline College, Star Lake at 272nd, and Federal Way downtown near the current Federal Way Transit Center. Okay. All right, this is the fun part. We're going to start up the drone flyover video, and then I'm going to immediately pause. The video starts at the north end, and that's where we just recently completed the physical tie-in to the existing Angle Lake Station. Actually happened this past summer. And I'm pausing here because you can see right away where our light rail crosses over Highway 99, as well as the ongoing construction by WashDOT to complete the Highway 509 expansion right underneath Highway 99. So right here at this one location, you have two highways, light rail, and planes departing overhead from SeaTac, and it's all happening at that same location. I think it's just really speaks to the growth we're seeing in South King County. I'm going to continue the drone video here. So as we continue south, you're going to see miles of completed track and traction power and systems work. And the analogy that I always like to use is that the track is like the skeleton. Our systems act as the brain and nervous system, and the trains are the muscle that moves our passengers around the region. And even though this drone video covers a lot of ground, almost 8 miles in just under 5 minutes, the portions between the stations are a bit redundant. So I am going to jump ahead a little bit to avoid these awkward silences. Right here. Okay. Back it up just a quick minute. Okay. So I'm pausing here. This is the Kent Des Moines station. I want to highlight some of the key features like the garage on the left. Can I use my mouse here? The newly paved 30th Avenue between the garage and the station right here, and the College Way connection to Highline College, which is off-screen to the right. And those large staging areas you're seeing here to the right or west of the station, those will be the locations of the transit-oriented development, or as we refer to them, TODs. Continue flying south here with the drone. So again, you're gonna see a lot of progress. This is what we call Structure B. This is right next to Lowe's in Kent, and eventually this structure is gonna touch down. Like I said before, in between the stations, just a lot of completed track and traction power. So here we go, just past, or here we go. You can see here, we're working on completing our track construction right here near the Midway landfill. And just past the Midway landfill is the location of the most challenging part of the project. And this is where we identified the differing site condition that required us to change to the long span bridge. And I'll get to more details on that in a minute. Here you can see on the video, that is the long span bridge. I think a lot of folks can see it from I-5. I'm gonna let this play out just a little bit more because just south of the long span bridge is the Star Lake Station. Creeping up on it here. Okay, here's Star Lake. shoot, sorry. Luckily, I know what the times are. Okay, pause it right there. Okay, so here I want to highlight the progress at Star Lake Station. Here you can see that we have the garage on the right. We have the roadway work that supports the bus loop right here. And then here you can see the station, which is adjacent to the 272nd off-ramp from I-5. Keep it moving, and, you know, the next several miles is a lot of that typical track. So again, I'm going to fast forward here. Let's get to the good part. Let's get to Federal Way. Okay, here we're coming up on it here. This is approaching the 320th off-ramp. And you can see here, this is where our alignment actually veers away from I-5 to the west, where we're now entering downtown Federal Way. The alignment parallels 317th before turning south, where we're actively constructing the Federal Way downtown station near the intersection of 23rd and South 320th Street. We then cross over 320th Street for our tail track and our end-of-line facility. And that's where our alignment ends, and eventually Tacoma Dome Link Extension will expand. The drone's now circling around, and it's going to fly over the future TOD and downtown Federal Way street grid before it flies over the expansion of the existing Federal Way Transit Center garage. See it right there. And as the drone continues to circle around, you're going to see the concrete paving here in a minute that will support the new bus loop, and that's going to help facilitate. Here we go. Oh, shoot. Pause again. Okay. So like I was saying, this is the new bus loop, which is going to help facilitate a more efficient transfer for our bus to rail passengers, which is going to be the majority of our riders. And the reason I'm stopping it here is I think this does offer a pretty good vantage point of some of the exciting progress we've made in the city of Federal Way, and this is progress that citizens are going to be able to use before light rail opens. So this is the location of the new roundabout at the intersection of 23rd and 317th. And here you can kind of see the concrete, right? You can see the roundabout starting to take shape. This roundabout is vital to the connection of this new bus loop, which is going to essentially be here and then loop around. And this is, like I said, this is the only portion of the project that is going to open for public service prior to light rail. We've been working really hard with city staff and our design builder to get this work completed and open this new bus loop by spring of next year. So that concludes the drone flyover. And now that I'm no longer trying to compete with the high-speed drone, I'd like to take a little more time to speak about some of the project highlights. So we're going to start up on the north end. Here at the Kent Des Moines Station across the street from Highline College. Made some really good progress here, as you can see, the brand new garage. I talked earlier about the street grid and the station with most of the work complete. By the end of the year, everything is going to look like a completed product, but we'll still be doing some final punch list items as well as some back-of-house work like testing and commissioning. It's also worth noting that the TOD developer selection is complete for the north site, and if anybody's got any questions on TOD, I'm sure Mateo can help provide some more information. All right, next project highlighted as we continue south is the Longspan Bridge. And this was not only the biggest challenge we faced on the project, I do think it's really important that we recognize that it's also the biggest challenge that we've overcome. Look, we would obviously love to have avoided this unforeseen condition that required a change of this scale, but that wasn't an option. Bottom line was we had a big problem, delays were mounting, so we partnered. We partnered with WashDOT, City of Kent, and the Army Corps of Engineers to develop the Longspan Bridge solution. And I gotta say, this really was the defining moment on the project. We could have gone down a path of dispute and positioning, but instead, I think we really did a great job of rallying together, and we expedited a really complex process without cutting any corners. And I think the end result, really is a great example of what you can do when you come together. If you've driven down I-5, you can see we've completed construction of an engineering marvel. And that engineering marvel is the longest span rail bridge in North America. That long span is 500 feet long, and it bridges over the poor soil that we unexpectedly encountered, which is susceptible to a landslide during a large-scale earthquake. Completion of the bridge has also received some recognition from the Seattle Times and more recently the Federal Way Mirror, highlighting the engineering and complexity of building this structure. We also recently had the pleasure of taking city staff out on site to see the bridge firsthand, including Mayor Farrell. And as the mayor has mentioned several times, it was important that we took the time to solve the problem and build a solution that will reliably last the lifetime of the system for our passengers. So next up, just south of that, is the Star Lake Station. As I stated during the drone video, we're making great progress here as well. This station's a little bit different. This is built on retained fill, unlike our other two stations, which are elevated on bridges. And this station is progressing really well with track work nearing completion, and the garage is structurally complete with finishes underway at both the station and the garage. And the last project highlight is right here in Federal Way. We've made a ton of progress on the paving for the new bus loop adjacent to the station. As I stated earlier, this new bus loop will be activated prior to opening the Link station. And it takes a lot of coordination to activate any new facility. So we're working really hard with Sound Transit Operations, our transit partners, and City of Federal Way staff to activate the bus loop by spring of next year. I'd also be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to thank E.J. Walsh and Brian Davis from the City of Federal Way. Those two have dedicated their time to come to the table and help resolve some of the challenges we've faced during construction. And it's my opinion that, their leadership has been paramount to the recent progress we've made, which has really helped us stay on track. So in addition to the bus loop and the station, the structural work on the garage expansion is also complete. And as you can see in this photo, we just completed, a pretty cool art feature. See if I can highlight it there. On the garage expansion. The photo really doesn't do it justice. If you haven't seen it already, I highly advise admiring the artwork from the parking lot of the PAC on a beautiful day like today. It's quite a sight to behold. All right, before I wrap up my part of this presentation, I want to take a quick look at the work that remains before we can open up light rail service to the public. So by the end of this year, the work north of the Longspan Bridge at 259th in the city of Kent is scheduled to be complete. And when that happens, we are planning on bringing trains to the Federal Way downtown station to start our system integrated testing on the south end. I think seeing the trains running on the alignment is going to be a very exciting moment, not just for the project team, but also for the public, because it really is a sign of this service coming soon to them. As I stated a couple times earlier, the reconfiguration of the Federal Way Transit Center and this activation of the new bus loop is scheduled to happen in spring of 2025, and that is huge. That's the next big thing on this project as far as I'm concerned. In the winter of next year, we're scheduled to be complete with all contract work, and we'll be ready to start pre-revenue service. And that pre-revenue service period is the last step before opening to the public, and that's when we complete all of our operator training and our simulated service to make sure everything is running smoothly and safely. Now, the ultimate goal, and I think this is a goal of the entire region, is to make sure that we have this service open to the public before the World Cup in 2026. And believe me, we're doing everything in our power to make that happen. So with that, I'd like to thank you one last time for giving me the opportunity to provide this update today. I'll pass it back to Katie. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sepper. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the art before I hand it over to our TOD presentation. So here is a picture of that stunning art that I know you have all seen from the PAC. This was a couple of weeks ago. I was walking out of an event from the PAC and couldn't resist snapping a photo with the mountain in the background. So this one is Christine Wynn's piece. It is complete and installed. The next two pieces that are coming, I know, are ones that folks are following closely along with. One is Donald Lipsky's sculpture for the plaza. It is in production right now. It will be a lamp consistent with the concepts that were shared with you all early last year. The other one that's coming in production right now and will be installed early next year is Christine Widgery's prismatic dichroic glass that's going to be installed in the canopy of the station itself. And this glass is very cool, and depending on the time of day and the level of light, it'll change color and it'll create kind of this cool, moody vibe in the station, which I think will be really neat. And what's nice about these three pieces is it's a really eclectic combination of art that hopefully there's something in there for everybody that they're going to be interested in. The last piece that's coming to the station area is actually the High Five, which you all maybe remember used to be on the roundabout by the 405 ramp or the HOV ramp. That has been in storage and being refurbished right now. The anchors and everything are in place for that to be installed in the second quarter of next year, also in the station plaza. And the artist is really excited about the location that we've selected for that. It'll be front and center for a piece that I keep hearing from community members. They're really excited to see come back and be part of the public art environment. So 4 pieces coming to the station area. One you already know and love, and those other ones are coming in Q1. So we'll keep you posted, and I know the art's very interesting to everybody, so we'll make sure that you have all the status updates and know when those pieces are going in. I'm going to pass it to Harrison now to start us on our TOD portion.
I actually have a quick question on the art real quick. Can you go back real quick? I get asked a lot, and I don't have an answer, just hoping you could give me. On that piece of art that is on the parking garage, what is it, like, what is the behind story, the representation of it? I see some trees, I see some lines, but I'm not the arts kind of guy, so I'm just curious, what's the
Yeah.
representation supposed to be of?
Definitely. So the kind of prominent triangle, I'm afraid to try to make things go back and
Gotcha.
mess up the slide deck. But the prominent triangle in the middle is inspired by Mount Rainier. And then, Kent to the rescue.
There we go.
The prominent triangle in the middle is Mount Rainier, and then Christine Wynn, who's the artist of this piece, actually did a residence at the Bonsai Museum and is really inspired by sort of the local flora, but then also the Bonsai Museum and some of the other natural elements of our community. So that's how it kind of comes together. It is a little bit abstract, but that's the inspiration behind it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Harrison.
I have a question also. Mayor?
Yes,
Is that okay?
yes.
Okay. So the other artwork, do you have pictures of them by any chance?
I don't have them in this slide deck, but I'm happy to put those back together and send them over. We haven't, the concepts that we shared early on have advanced towards production, but since they're being installed in like 3 months, we haven't worked on getting any images of the production themselves, but I can pull those concepts back together and share them with you all again.
That would be helpful.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Katie. Good evening, everybody. My name is Harrison Price. I am Sound Transit's TOD Engagement Program Manager. So we're going to start off with a quick overview of how Sound Transit supports and fosters TOD, and then I will hand things to Mateo to get into more of what that means in Federal Way. First off, TOD supports vibrant neighborhoods with direct access to regional transit, bringing a diversity of housing, retail, community space to our transit hubs, expands those connections for our communities. Sound Transit plays a role in TOD through our surplus property. So whenever we build stations, expand our system, we often need more land to construct stations than we do to operate them, vis-a-vis Federal Way, where we've got this plot next to the station. Once construction is finished and projects open, that land becomes available for transit-oriented development. We understand that finding affordable housing, especially near transit hubs, is increasingly difficult amid rising rents and home prices, and so we're really striving to be part of the housing solution by creating and supporting these opportunities for TOD. From to the next slide, do we lose our? Perfect. So to date, we've got just over 3,400 total homes built or in process. 2,600 of those are affordable units. We'll get into a little bit more of what we mean by affordable on the next slide. Over $2 billion in total public and private investments in TOD projects across 14 stations and counting. Okay, so I mentioned affordability. What Sound Transit means when we say affordable housing for our TOD program comes back to our 80-80-80 policy. That's a state statute that's part of the ST3 program that requires at least 80% of our surplus property offerings that are suitable for affordable housing to go to qualified entities that will develop housing that is at least where at least 80% of those units are affordable to families making 80% or less area median income. 80-80-80 is a great way to distill that long policy down. Good way to look at it is that the majority of property that is surplus is for affordable housing. As a quick note, this policy does apply across our entire property portfolio, meaning that the 80% applies to TOD projects throughout the region. So the exact makeup of each TOD project is going to vary based on market conditions, feasibility, and the developers we select. Finally, providing housing that's affordable to more people than our market rate developments would bring to areas like Federal Way is a core value of our TOD program and transit expansion. And so we partner with nonprofit affordable housing developers to bring projects that contribute to that housing solution. Next slide. So a quick look at our TOD project implementation process. 4 main phases that we go through to realize these projects. The first being the development strategy, in which we go out to the community, talk with folks about what the vision is for how these station areas bring a diversity of development. We also go through some feasibility studies at that point to make sure that what we're bringing is useful and needed for communities. Also part of the development strategy is identifying site goals. We'll start to get into more of those specifically for Federal Way in Mateo's slides. Currently, for the Federal Way TOD project, we are in the development strategy phase, having completed community engagement and those feasibility studies. Those are informing the site goals and offering strategy. A couple quick notes on the Sound Transit board process as it relates to TOD. 2 things to note here, that there are 2 main points where the Sound Transit board weighs in on our TOD projects. The first is approving the offering strategy. We're in the process of preparing to ask Sound Transit board to approve the recommended offering strategy, which Mateo will get into. And then after we go out and solicit proposals through our RFP process, the board will approve the key business terms for the developer that is selected through that competitive process. Okay, let's get into our Federal Way Downtown Station, TOD. So the site is currently being used for equipment storage and staging during construction. You will have seen in the drone flyover that we're starting to build out the street grid, but a lot of it is still being used to store equipment and vehicles. It's just over 6 acres of land spread across 4 developable pads that will allow us to be flexible in how we bring development to these parcels. So throughout our early stages, we've been working in really close partnership with city staff to support how these TOD opportunities fulfill the community's vision and the city's vision for a vibrant city center with direct access to transit, really building on things like the TC3 development and the city center vision that will support this station hub. Okay. moving along, talking about how we engage with the community. So Sound Transit involves communities across all of our projects. TOD is no different. Public feedback guides what these projects look like, what our goals are, how our priorities are mapped onto the developments that we select. We conducted engagement for the Federal Way Downtown Station, TOD project over this spring and summer, starting with stakeholder interviews in the spring. We then launched an online open house and survey that ran from April through mid-June. During that same window, we were at the Federal Way Farmers Market, talking with people there. We were at the Federal Way Transit Center, meeting people on their way to work. And then as a next step, we will begin to engage with potential development partners to start to sync up what we've heard from the community with what they will eventually bring to these sites. So what did we hear from the community? Four main points that emerged out of a really solid body of input. First is that people want to see affordable housing options. The need for affordable housing was consistently highlighted, and the community was advocating for a range of housing types, apartments, condos, townhouses, making sure that there are spaces and homes around this station that are affordable for families, young professionals, and folks with low incomes, big priority. Second one was that we bring public and commercial spaces to the station hub. Community emphasized the need for spaces that not only serve transit users, but also the broader community. So year-round accessible facilities, combination of mixed use and mixed income. Third one was a community hub that has a real sense of place. This starts to tie into some of the themes that we got into with public art. Really having a station that feels vibrant and feels like a hub for Federal Way. A range of living, working, social spaces that really create an inclusive environment. And then fourth was dense and livable developments. So community recognized that denser housing developments, as the city center vision is being realized, are essential for maximizing the land use efficiency and contributing to that vision. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Mateo.
Councilmember Seffa Dawson?
Yeah, I have
You
a question, sorry. So the slide with the 80, 80, and 80, can you help me understand the difference between the first and the second? And then I also have a question around the income.
Yes, so on this first 80, so across our entire portfolio of surplus property, 80% of that land is to be offered for the creation of affordable housing. So it gets a little complicated on this because we think about, for example, the Federal Way downtown sites. It's not necessarily that 80% of those pads would be set aside for affordable housing, but that's mapped across the entire region.
And then the second one is?
The second one is that in the developments that we select for these surplus properties, 80% of the units in those developments need to be affordable housing.
Okay, so it's difference between the land versus what's built.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the third one, it says it's for those earning below or equal to 80%. So could 100% of that be at 80%? Are you breaking it down by 30, 50, 60, 80, whatever? How's it broken down?
It would be broken, the way it's broken down would differ project by project, depending on which developer we select and what proposed project they bring. Oftentimes there is a mix of a range of affordabilities, project by project. So it wouldn't necessarily be that all of the units are 80% below, 30% below, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question might be for Keith, or I don't know, but how do we tie the TOD with TC3 projects?
Lucky you.
Kind of a host would I be
So
if I went
funny.
first? So great question. You know, we've been trying to look at this area as not project by project, but more as a neighborhood. And so as we think about, and I don't know if Mateo's going to touch on how many units they think might be built overall on those 4 pads. But we know that the development agreement we executed with Trent was like 1,600. Right now, the conversation we're having with the Commons is somewhere between 1,300 and 1,900. And so when you look at all of these housing units together, you should think about it as one neighborhood, right? And what we're trying to do is get a mix of incomes across the whole neighborhood, recognizing that Sound Transit has a statute obligation to provide a majority of their property at below 100% AMI. So I think the way we're looking at it and trying to look at it is holistically as a neighborhood and not necessarily just the Sound Transit project as kind of a standalone isolated development project. I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did, but that also create, you know, I'm also thinking aesthetically,
yes.
is everybody talking in terms of how you develop those?
So
But you did answer my question, yes.
So from an aesthetic standpoint, from like a building aesthetic standpoint, in your wisdom, you guys adopted architectural guidelines for downtown. So and those were included some general kind of building material parameters that everybody should follow. So even though different architects will design projects differently, what we try to do is to provide some commonality by having the same guidelines apply across all the different projects and all the different income levels. So even though there might be projects that are more affordable than others, from an aesthetic standpoint, hopefully they all look to the same quality because of the design guidelines.
Thank you.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, real quick, you guys had mentioned that 80%, but that doesn't have to be like, it's spread across all properties. Is there any stations where none of the TODs were used for housing?
Might lean on Mara to answer that one.
No, I don't think we have any station areas where we've done only market rate or only commercial development.
So pretty much every station has at least one housing
When
development.
housing- Yeah, our focus has been around housing primarily.
So that's a yes
Yes.
then? Okay, that's a look. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So when we had our small meeting with you guys, I asked a similar question as to how many stations have affordable housing and how many stations might not have affordable housing. Do you know, let's take the Bellevue station. The percentage of housing there is, how much is affordable as compared to what we might have here in Federal Way? And how much is market rate?
Well, it's gonna depend first on whether we have surplus property at any given station. So of stations where we do have surplus property and TOD projects have been built, the main driver of that is the development proposals that we receive and select, but then also the market feasibility studies. So, what is the demand for housing, affordable housing in different station areas? And I couldn't speak to the specifics of like what certain stations in Bellevue versus Seattle versus Linwood have. Tamara might be able to.
So then Federal Way, we have 5 surplus sites.
One surplus site spread across 4 pads. Mateo, I feel like Mateo is going to start to get into some of these questions.
Okay, then I can wait.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Dovey?
Yeah, I got one more question. I actually have 4 questions. When I look at your 80-80-80, that makes sense if it's done equally across the board, across the whole region. But if Bellevue, and I'll just use that because I heard the name, is all at 100%, and we haven't built any on our pads yet, but you got to get to 80, if those are the only 2, that means we're down in the 40 and 50 to get you to 80, because you got to round down to make everything 80. Is that correct how it works?
In theory, that would be correct how it works, but I would say that the makeup of the affordability across our portfolio right now is such that we're not playing a like balancing game between stations, and the affordable housing projects in Bellevue are, you know, at that 80% or below level.
Okay, well,
So-
again, I'm not questioning how it works, but if you don't have many TODs that have housing yet, and you have to hit 80, you gotta average down in order to hit your federal requirements, right?
I'll just say, in terms of our compliance with the state statute, we're at 90-something% so far of our properties offered for affordable housing. The Bellevue site specifically, since we're speaking about it, the portion that we're about to close on is all affordable housing. It's 200-plus units of affordable housing there. The rest of the site, we still haven't determined the programming on. So Bellevue is getting significant affordable housing on that site.
And everybody should have affordable housing. I'm not questioning it, it's just who gets the most affordable housing. My other,
I just want to clarify too, the income levels aren't averaged across all of the sites, just all of them have to be
right.
80% or
Okay.
below.
My other question is, you said these start after the station's open, so this is really 2026 we're talking about before you start to diverse these locations?
That's the intent, that's correct. We try to time the groundbreaking of TOD sites as close to the station openings as possible.
Okay.
Obviously, that depends, but that's our intent.
Right. And then, you've done all this research, outreach that I've seen, and I actually was hung out at one that you had at the farmer's market. And I think my wife and I were one of the only two people that showed up and asked a question, but when does the city council get to have more discussions about what, you know, we think we'd like to see happen also? It seems like you're doing lots of outreach, and I don't remember, I don't know, anybody up here, you've been in a meeting where you've talked about it?
I've asked for a list of developers and still waiting on that.
Yeah, I was just curious if we're gonna have some input to help, you know, to at least you hear what we have to say.
Well, we're here.
Yeah, I know, you're
We're
great. I
listening.
really appreciate it.
We love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
I would respond to that by saying, since I've started on this project 2 years ago, we have been working with your city staff. They have been in every conversation that we've had about planning for the Federal Way Downtown Station TOD sites. I'm gonna go to this a little bit more in my presentation, but what we're doing, we're not planning in a bubble. We are planning in partnership and with collaboration with the city of Federal Way to build on the progress that you've made toward realizing your city center vision. We've done that by working with Keith, by working with Tanya, by working with Kent, and by working with your staff. And we're here today to present what our recommended offering strategy is going to be to the board. We're happy to take any more questions,
I
but
just have one last question. It's
Absolutely.
Very, does the city have any choice to maybe, if we wanted to ever buy one of these piece of properties and do some other programming than housing, but we might want to have a senior center, or we might want to have a community market, or we might want to have a park? I mean, do we get to play in any of that instead of all going to developers and we don't have any say or any opportunity to buy in?
I'll leave that to my boss.
We can sell property at fair market value for
Correct.
other purposes besides affordable housing. And so we can speak about those possibilities with the city. We should probably let Mateo go
Okay.
into what we're envisioning for the sites, and then I think
will
we
let
can
you
talk more.
I will let
Yeah.
you finish, but, you
Yeah.
know, that's what I've been thinking about.
All right. Hello. I'm going to skip to my section over here, just a moment. All right. I've already spoken, but I haven't introduced myself. My name is Matthew Mateo, and I am the project manager for the Federal Way Downtown Station TOD site. Thank you, Council President Kochmar, Mayor Farrell, and council members for your opportunity to speak today. As exhibited by the work that we're all doing here and the excitement around the area, it's a good time to be in Federal Way, and we're excited to be a part of it. And so my intent today is to talk a little bit more about the TOD site very quickly, because I know that we're running up against exec session. Give you an update on where we're at in the development process with the site, preview what our recommended offering strategy is going to be to our Sound Transit Board, discuss the work that we did to arrive at this recommended offering strategy, and answer any relevant questions that you may have about TOD overall, life, anything else that I can possibly answer. I will caveat all of this by saying I just got back from parental leave, and my family and I just welcomed our little boy. I am running on fumes, as most new parents are, and so if there are any errors or omissions on my part, blame the baby, or blame me. We'll fix it later. So, with that said, let's move to TOD. I want to first recognize that Federal Way is the home of Sound Transit's first TOD project. In 2009, the Korean Women's Association opened their senior city development adjacent to the Federal Way Transit Center, and for over 15 years, they've been providing housing and needed services in your city center. They are an example that housing and high-capacity transit can both coexist and thrive, and it is our intent to build on their legacy and build on their progress and the work that you're doing through the Federal Way Downtown Station TOD site. I mentioned this very briefly in response to your question, Councilmember Dovey, but from the very beginning of this process, we have been intentional in saying and in making sure that we're building on the work that you've already done. You've set the groundwork for City Center. You've revised your zoning codes. You've approved the TC3 development. We are a part of that. We are a part of realizing your vision, and we've been working with your staff, with Keith, with Tanya, with Kent, and with your former staffer, Cheney Skadsden, very, very frequently. They may be bothered by how many phone calls and emails they get from me at this point, but they have been gracious in their knowledge, in their time, and in making sure that we're working towards the shared vision that we're all trying to realize here. And so I want to make sure that that point is very clear as we go through this presentation, that this is a partnership, and the success of this partnership is only because of the trust that we have in each other and that the work that we'll continue to be doing as this project progresses. And so I'm going to turn to the TOD site itself very quickly. On your screen, you'll see a snippet from the drone flyover video. What you're seeing is the 6-acre TOD site. North is to the top right of the screen. As my colleague Harrison mentioned, after the completion of the Federal Way Downtown Link Light Rail Station, there are going to be 4 separate development paths. Going from the top left of your screen and heading south, you'll see sites 1 through 3. Each of those sites are about an acre each. Site 1 is the smallest at just under an acre. Site 2 is a little bit bigger than an acre. Site 3 is just about an acre. And lastly, Site 4 on the east of the site is the largest site at over 2 acres. I say all this, and over the past year, we've been working to understand what the development potential of the 4 sites are so that we can provide a recommended offering strategy to the board in early next year. The strategy is not approved by our board, so this is just a preview of it. But that recommended offering strategy is going to be that we offer sites 1 and 2 first to affordable housing developers, and then sites 3 and 4 at a later date offer that for development. We expect that sites 3 and 4 would have a significant market rate component. And so, biggest takeaway from all of this, 1 and 2, affordable housing now, 3 and 4, later date, significant market rate component is the expectation at this time. And so,
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
What is significant market rate development? What does that mean?
we'll be working with your staff to identify what that would include, but based on the nature of the site and frankly, the major constraint of those sites, which is environmental contamination on sites 3 and sites 4, leads it to most likely be a market rate site. And so I can speak more to the environmental contamination or answer any other questions you may have about that. But the nature of sites 3 and 4 leads it to be more of a market rate site is what our expectation is, but it's not a guarantee right now. And so through all of this, we are also guided by our 2019 development agreement, which states that we are all working towards a mixed-use, mixed-income, compact, walkable urban center. This is in addition to the partnership that we're already having with your staff and the shared vision for your city center that we are all working towards. I'm going to go a little bit more into the due diligence work that we've done very quickly. over the past year and a half, we've partnered with local architecture, engineering, and real estate firms to understand what the market is in Federal Way, what we can expect from the market, to understand what some site constraints on the TOD sites could be, which would affect potential development, and then also see what the development potential would be after understanding what the market, the site constraints are, and is also reviewing, also using your most up-to-date zoning codes. What we found from the market study is that there is a demand for multifamily housing in the area, but there are some financial challenges for market rate multifamily in the area. Lastly, they also found that there is the potential for a hospitality in Federal Way as well. And so we asked a local architecture firm, Shar and Associates, to look at your zoning codes, look at the market study, and see what the development potential could be on sites 1 and 2. They found that there was the potential for a 6-story building on site 1 that could support approximately 100 homes on that site. And so the section view that you have there shows a 6-story building with approximately 100 homes on that site.
How many bedrooms per unit?
This was a mix of one bedrooms and 2 and 3 bedrooms, ma'am.
How does that go with the view corridor that we've established? Are you going to address that?
That's a great question. Thank you so
Okay.
much for bringing that up.
All right.
We've asked them to consider that as well. They're well aware of this, and this considers the view corridor ordinance which you've enacted. And obviously, your code says any project that will be permitted has to do this with their own review anyways, but this is what they think would conform to your zoning code and to your view corridor ordinance as well.
What's the proposed height of building 1?
60 feet.
And have we, have you, from the elevated spot where the Performing Arts and Event Center, have you seen at where building 1 is, if you put 60 feet up, can you see the mountain from that?
I don't know, I'll have to look at what the architects provided, but the specific, extremely specific ask was to make sure that it conformed to the view corridor ordinance.
Very good, okay,
So-
please.
I have a question.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
on 1, 2, 3, and 4, where is the open space?
I'm sorry?
Open space?
I can't speak to the, I do not know what the open space for this is right now, because it's just, how does the site fit to the zoning code and to the number of units? When we get a specific developer proposal, they will also be responsive to your green space standards and your open space standards as well after the RFP process.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And then for site 2, we asked the same question. What do we think could be the potential for site 2? Because site 2 is a little bit bigger than site 1, they expect that a same size building, same height building, excuse me, at 6 stories, approximately 60 feet tall, could fit approximately 140 homes. And this is a similar unit breakdown of 1s, 2s, and family size units.
And family size are 3 bedrooms?
2 and 3s, yes, ma'am. All right, moving on. All right, very briefly. As we've said numerous times, we intend to bring this recommended offering strategy to offer sites 1 and 2 for affordable housing to our board early next year. If our board approves, we intend to release an RFP to the development community following the approval of our board action. Our process for releasing an RFP and securing a development partner, we typically leave an RFP open for a number of months to allow proposers to review the RFP, put together a team or their response, and respond to us. Following the RFP closure, a panel will review any proposals and potentially recommend a proposer that meets the selection criteria. If a proposer is selected, we would then work with that proposer to negotiate the key business terms of the development, and then return to our Sound Transit Board, as Harrison mentioned, to approve the final key business terms, allowing the development to proceed.
Council President?
Since these are low-income buildings, are they going to be run under HUD, like HUD reimbursement for them? In other words,
Over the-
for the rent? So is it like, we have some developments in Federal Way that are HUD developments.
Yes, ma'am.
That are reimbursed, people are on a list and they go under HUD, and then the HUD subsidizes the rent. Is that what this will be?
I can't speak to what the exact affordability levels will be, and thus whether this would be a specific HUD project. Over the next few months, we'll be working with your staff to identify what the site goals are, which include the affordability levels, excuse me, for the sites.
What, one of the things I'm a little worried about is that sometimes when they're 3-bedroom apartments, we get one family per bedroom. An immigrant family, for example, we've
Sure.
already had that. And so what happens then is that you have a problem with the school district, for one thing, a burdening for the schools, but other than that, the kids tend to get into some issues. So how do we control, I mean, in other words, if we had a building that was for seniors, that's quite different than below market. We do need buildings for seniors that are low-income seniors. And that's a whole different topic than, low-income families that, So how do we, because you're going to pick the developer, how do we have any control over what happens?
I'm gonna let Keith speak to what the housing action plan's needs are that were identified in the city of Federal Way. I will say that as we look towards identifying affordability levels and what the project goals are, we typically lean to someone like Keith heavily to understand what the housing needs are in the area, to the community engagement report, which identified a need for a diversity of housing incomes and affordability and housing choices, and as well as our funding partners.
Sure. And that works well when we have a diversity of choices within the building, for example, rather than, all one way or the other. But thanks.
I can't speak to the specific makeup of the building, but we'll be working with Keith extensively going forward.
Does Keith have anything he wants to say?
You may not like it. So.
I'm just thinking of Parks.
Yeah. So what we have right now in our downtown area is we have a lot of housing for seniors. That's what's been built recently. You have, as was mentioned earlier, the Korean women's housing that's next to the Park and Ride. You have SHAG. You have another senior housing project that was built on the west side of PVR. So because our school impact fees were so high for a period of time, the only new housing we got multifamily-wise was senior housing because they didn't have to pay school impact fees. One of the things that we need to think about in terms of who's going to want to live near the transit station is it's going to be a number of 20-something-year-olds that are going to use that transit to get to employment, and we really don't have a lot of choices for that age group within our city right now. So I think the bottom line is we need housing for populations at every age band. I think to the concern that you raised, Council President, in terms of making sure that, the units are designed in a way to capture whatever school impacts there might be if there are children living in there. And hopefully there will be. A complete neighborhood should have kids. So we'll kind of try and make sure that we think about all the maybe pitfalls and provide, the best outcome that we can. That'll be, I think, on both of our to-do lists.
Councilmember McDaniel, then Councilmember Honda, Councilmember Walsh, then Councilmember Dovey.
All right, I'll try to make them quick. My first question is going to be on Lot 1 and 2. When we had a conversation beforehand, there was a question, you guys are going to do a test on the well for contamination. Have you guys done the test? Do we know where we're at that particular?
I do not believe we have installed the new monitoring wells. May I answer that question by moving to my next slide and then returning to this question?
I thought you were
Very
done.
briefly.
Sorry, keep going.
Thank you. So, this is the timeline for sites 1 and 2. Last slide, I promise. Sites 3 and 4, you mentioned the contamination. Sites 3 and 4 are the more complex environmental contamination sites. And again, these are due to legacy environmental contamination that were on the sites previous to Sound Transit taking ownership of them. The source for the contamination on pad 4, the large site adjacent to the Link Light Rail Station, is a former laundromat that was there from 1985 to 1992. And then the source of contamination on the south site, pad 3, was a former fuel service station that was also present on the site. And so these are all legacy uses, legacy sites. And then the contamination that you raised for sites 1 and 2, no, I do not believe those wells have been installed, but we will be happy to update you on what we hear.
And my last question is actually, is Kent, is he behind you? When we had our meeting, you were in there too. I believe you were taking notes. If you could check on the list of developers and then also the presentation that we talked about. Those are the two things.
Yes,
That's all I had.
that's on my notes.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, Councilor Honda?
Thank you. The 80-80-80 is very interesting to me and intriguing. I did ask in my meeting if I could get a list of all of the stations and through on the whole line, and how the housing is going with all those stations, market rate or low-income housing.
Sure.
I'm
We can
very,
work on
I
getting
would
that
like
to
to
you.
make sure that we're doing the 80-80-80 with as much as possible at every station.
We can work on getting that information to you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And what I would do is just get it to Brian, and then Brian, our city administrator.
Okay.
And we'll make sure that we get it out to the entire council.
Okay,
All right,
we'll do, Mayor Farrell.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, basically, back to the 80-80-80. I think that we need to, my concern is kind of distinguishing between affordable housing and low-income housing. And sometimes those two terms, I mean, low-income housing is affordable, but there may be affordable housing that isn't necessarily low-income housing. And I think there's a big difference between housing that's in the 60 to 80% AMI range and housing that's in the 30% range. And that's where my concern is, and I think it may be the concern of some of the others on the council as well. So anyway, just want to, I mean, it sounds like you really don't have an answer for us with that, but we would very much like an answer. And then you mentioned that, that you'll get the RFPs and then review the RFPs. Is it possible for this council to be involved in some way with the review of those RFPs?
The development agreement does give city staff one voting seat on the evaluation committee and then one advisory seat as well. Our procurement process is pretty strict about having that be not an elected official, but a staff member for reasons of, influencing procurement outcomes from a public agency.
So on that, the committee that said it allows for one city staff member. How many are on that? If it's a voting group, how many are on that?
Yeah, it varies a bit. I would say on average 5 to 7.
So with 7, that one vote doesn't hold a lot of weight then.
It's a consensus-based conversation. It's not a outvoting one member type of committee.
Okay.
We'll take the opinions of the city very seriously as part of the evaluation. It's, as Mateo said, it's really important for us to be partnering with cities and realizing a vision for TOD that we all are excited about, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, and Councilmember Dovey?
Yeah, and my comment's a little different than maybe you've heard. I'm not really concerned about what kind of housing goes there, because we have zoning codes and we have rules and regulations, and they're gonna have to fit to what we've been working in land use for years. So, you meet the items, and that's probably what we have to do. But again, I'll come back to what my biggest concern is. I would like to see, and maybe I'm the only one, but how the city can control or be part of the other two places, 3 and 4, because we're gonna have a whole bunch of more services. We might need more park space. We might need, we might have some other things we want to do. And these TODs are the next prime places in our city. And if don't have an opportunity, if the council up here thinks we should, to participate in buying something or directing what we think our long-term needs of our city are, then all of a sudden we're just You know, it's just our zoning codes and we get what we get, so, I mean, that's kind of my biggest concern about this whole thing, that we don't have, maybe, I guess some of our council members have meetings, so they did have a lot to say. I've never been in one, so maybe I'm just a mushroom out in the dark somewhere, I don't know.
We just did a round of small group briefings, but we're happy to come and talk more. And I would say, you know, I'll look to Mateo for more sense on timeline for sites 3 and 4, but there's definitely an opportunity, whether it's via staff or to talk directly about what your visions are for sites 3 and 4.
It's
as
not
we
me
learn more.
personally, I'm just
Yeah,
talking citywide.
right, you're the royal you. Yeah.
I just, one more, two more things. One very quick one. Mateo, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And then going clear back to some of the previous stuff when they were talking about parking. It seems to me as though, I mean, the parking garage has been expanded, and from my understanding, it is already full. And so when the light rail does come in, you know, you're mentioning that a lot of the people will be coming in from buses from other areas, but a lot of people will be driving as well. I mean, what's going to happen with parking? I mean, it sounds like that there's going to be a shortage of parking, especially during the decade or so when this is the end of the line, when we have people driving from Tacoma or whatever else. And sure, some will be taking a bus, but a lot will be driving.
I'll answer one TOD question, and then Katie can take over for the project most likely. The TOD will conform to your parking zoning code, and so that's a given. And so, Community Development Director Keith will have an opportunity to review the project to make sure it conforms to the parking standards in the area.
Yeah,
And so
I'm
at
not
least
so
for the
concerned
TOD.
about the TOD for that, but just the station.
Yeah, you're right. People do like driving to the stations. Our environmental work identified that probably about 2/3 of people will arrive at the station via some other transit. But a lot of people do also drive. And we always try to add as much parking to the system as we can, but there are levers, right, in terms of how much it costs to build parking, how much we think we'll need in the long term. You're right, this 10-year window before TDLE opens is probably going to put some pressure on the end of the line. There are 3,200 parking stalls coming across the 3 stations, so hopefully people are going to use the adjacent parking facility that's most convenient for them. The other thing that our board has approved, which is one of our tools for managing parking utilization, is actually charging for parking, which is one of the things that we're starting to talk about already for the Linwood Link extension stations. That maybe you saw that Seattle Times article about the garages already being full, but that'll be another lever that will consider a small daily fee for paid parking, which can influence how people can consider using the station.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember McDaniel?
Real quick, Councilman Adobe, one of the things that was in the conversation is 3 and 4 require environmental cleanup, and 3 being that it's owned by a gas station requires you to upfront the money. So there is some opportunities where people who have bigger bank accounts like the cities, I think will be able to speak to it.
And they might make a great parking garage on the big place to alleviate parking in the future that we build.
All right, thank you. Was there any more of the presentation?
I just want to close by saying, market studies are very, they're very data-driven, but the reality and what my takeaway from market studies are people want to live in Federal Way, and we want to help bring people to Federal Way. And so thank you for the time that we have here today. We look forward to continue working with you.
Speaking about bringing people to Federal Way, we're worried about the World Cup and making sure that light rail gets done before World Cup comes to Seattle.
Separate promised. So.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, we, I think I'd have the Sound Transit folks stay. I'd like to say a quick word to you after the meeting. We will be, this meeting will be in recess for purposes of executive session, collective bargaining pursuant to RCW 4230-1404B. Approximate time will be about 15 minutes. That ought to give us, but council, let's get right back there as soon as we can. And Sound Transit representatives, thank you very much. Great job. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. We are in recess for that stated purpose.